This demonstration is entitled Instantiation of a TCSQL class. Now, TCSQL features the powerful ability to support the object-oriented paradigm directly in a relational database. So it supports the notion of classes and objects, and single and multiple inheritance, and polymorphism. What you will see in this demonstration is a very complex class definition featuring various single and multiple inheritance paths. And we will demonstrate the ability to instantiate that class definition using standard vanilla SQL. This demonstration shows two applications running. We have a PowerPoint presentation shown on the left. On the right, we show Microsoft SQL Server Analyzer running. What we want to do in this demonstration is take the example shown in the PowerPoint presentation and show it actually running in SQL Server here. So let's take a closer look at this example here. What we have is a class graph here. We have the notion of a boy, and the boy we see has a number of properties, a property here called boy attribute. We also see this is a relationship, and this is used to inherit properties of superclasses of boy. We also see a has not a relationship, and this is TCSQL's support of inheritance override. So now we have a number of tables associated with this class graph here. We have a class table showing the nodes of our class graph. We have a class connection table showing the connections in our class graph here. And what we want to do is the following. We want to instantiate a boy here, and we want to call that boy Andy here. And the way we do this in TCSQL is merely to execute an insert statement into our object table. So what will happen is TCSQL magically behind the scenes will insert records into appropriate object and object connection tables representing an instantiation of a boy. And so what you get is the object graph equivalent shown here on the right. This graph represents the data shown in these two tables here. So let's now see what this looks like when we actually execute it here. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I should point out, first of all, that some of the table names are a little different than what's shown here. In the PowerPoint presentation, we see a table named object. The real table name is called TCSQL object. Similarly, we see a table here called class. The real table name is TCSQL class here. Also, another thing to point out here is when we do an insert, we're inserting a name and the name of a class. It turns out the actual implementation, we're actually inserting the ID of a class rather than the name. So let's begin here. The first thing I want to do is show you that, in fact, our object table starts out empty here. And similarly, our object connection table is also empty. Let's now take a look at our class table. And what you see here are 26 records here, and these 26 records represent the nodes shown here in our class graph. And finally, let's now do an insert here into our TCSQL object table. And upon doing that, we should now see records in our object table. And there we go. We have 8 records representing the 8 nodes of our object graph. Here's a look at the connection here. Connections. We see 7 object connections, which correspond to the object connections you see in our graph here. And so we've been able to demonstrate a rather slick, very powerful capability here, the ability to support object-oriented programming directly in a relational database using nothing more than standard SQL.